Born into absurdity, the formation of a radical consciousness. One is born without wanting to. One dies without knowing. This sentence does not simply describe life. It exposes it. In these few words lies the entire tragedy of existence, as Carlo Michelstaedter understood it. To be born without consent, to be thrown into a world already structured, named, organized, and judged, and then to leave it without ever truly knowing why one was here at all. This is not merely unfortunate, it is absurd. And yet, for most people, this absurdity remains hidden behind routines, ambitions, and socially approved narratives that transform confusion into something tolerable. Carlo Michelstaedter refused this transformation. He refused consolation. He refused lies. Carlo was born on June 3, 1887, in the town of Gorizia, a borderland city within the Austro-Hungarian Empire, a place shaped by overlapping cultures, languages, and identities. From the very beginning, his life unfolded within a world of contradictions. He was born into a middle-class Jewish family that valued culture, education, and integration into broader society. His family was not marginalized in the usual sense. They were respected, stable, and intellectually engaged. Yet this very respectability would become, for Carlo, a symbol of the deeper prison of social conformity. His father, Alberto Michelstaedter, was a successful insurance director and a prominent figure in Gorizia's cultural life. He embodied the ideal modern citizen, responsible, respected, productive, and obedient to the unwritten rules of society. To the outside world, Alberto represented achievement. To Carlo, he represented something else entirely, the perfect example of what he would later describe as the rhetorical man, a man who lives entirely within society's expectations, who follows its logic, who plays its game well, and who never asks whether the game itself is worth playing. From an early age, Carlo sensed that something was wrong. Not wrong in a dramatic or emotional sense, but wrong at a fundamental level. The world around him functioned smoothly, yet it felt hollow. People spoke of purpose, duty, success, and progress with absolute confidence, yet none of these words seemed to answer the most basic question. Why live at all? Why endure? Why strive? These questions were not encouraged. They were quietly discouraged, dismissed as impractical, immature, or dangerous. Carlo was an exceptionally sensitive child, intellectually gifted and emotionally intense. This sensitivity was not a weakness. It was his greatest strength and his greatest burden. He felt contradictions deeply. He noticed the gap between what people said and how they lived. He observed how language was used not to express truth, but to cover it. Social life appeared to him as a theater in which everyone played roles without ever admitting that they were acting. His education only intensified this awareness. At classical high school, he excelled in literature, philosophy, and languages. He absorbed ancient Greek thought, not as a historical curiosity, but as a living challenge. The Greeks did not seek comfort. They sought truth, even when truth was painful. This stood in stark contrast to the modern world he inhabited, where truth was increasingly subordinated to utility and stability. In 1905, Carlo left Gorizia to study mathematics in Vienna. This choice itself was telling. Mathematics represents order, certainty, structure, a world governed by clear rules and logical necessity. But Carlo could not remain there. Mathematics offered precision, but not meaning. It explained how things functioned, but not why existence itself should matter. After a short time, he abandoned mathematics entirely and moved to Florence, drawn by art, literature, and philosophy domains, where questions were allowed to remain open. Florence exposed him to the great traditions of Western thought. Plato's search for truth beyond appearances, Aristotle's inquiry into being, Schopenhauer's pessimism, Nietzsche's ruthless critique of morality and illusion. All these voices resonated deeply with Carlo, yet none of them provided a refuge. Each, in its own way, sharpened his awareness of the fundamental emptiness beneath social life. During these years, tragedy struck his family. His older brother Gino took his own life. This event marked Carlo permanently. It was not merely grief that followed, but recognition. Gino's death confirmed what Carlo already sensed, that life, when stripped of illusions, could become unbearable. Yet Carlo did not interpret this as a psychological failure. He interpreted it as a philosophical fact. He began to see existence itself as a trap, not because it involved suffering. Suffering was inevitable, but because it demanded participation in a lie. Society demanded that individuals accept ready-made meanings, predefined goals, and borrowed values. To live was to comply. To question was to risk isolation. To refuse was to be labeled abnormal. By the time Carlo returned to Gorizia in 1909, his inner world was already sealed. He was no longer searching for answers. He was preparing to expose a structure. What he would write next would not be a work of philosophy in the traditional sense. It would be an indictment, persuasion and rhetoric, the mechanism of self-deception. Work that would define Carlo Michelstaedter's legacy began as a university requirement. Officially, Persuasion and Rhetoric was a thesis submitted to the University of Florence. In reality, it was a philosophical rupture. Carlo was not interested in contributing to academic discourse. He was interested in revealing the machinery that made discourse possible, and unbearable. At the heart of his thought lies a devastating distinction: persuasion versus rhetoric. These are not merely linguistic categories. They are modes of existence. Rhetoric, for Carlo, is the foundation of social life. It is the system of language, symbols, values, and narratives through which society maintains itself. Rhetoric does not aim at truth. It aims at continuity. It exists to ensure that individuals continue to function, to work, to reproduce, to obey, and to hope, even when there is no reason to do so. From childhood, individuals are immersed in rhetoric. They are told who they are, what matters, what success looks like, and what failure means. Education does not awaken. It conditions. Morality does not liberate. It regulates. Culture does not reveal. It distracts. Every institution participates in the same operation, transforming existential uncertainty into manageable illusions. The most dangerous aspect of rhetoric is that it presents itself as freedom. Individuals are told they are free because they can choose careers, lifestyles, and opinions. But these choices exist only within a predetermined framework. The system itself is never questioned. The question, why live this way, is replaced with, how can I succeed within it? Rhetoric promises fulfillment in the future. If you work hard enough, sacrifice enough, adapt enough, happiness will come later. This postponement is essential. It keeps individuals moving, striving, enduring. Life becomes a continuous deferral. One never lives. One prepares to live. Persuasion, by contrast, is immediate and uncompromising. Persuasion is the state of an individual who no longer seeks justification for existence from outside. It is the refusal to live on credit. The persuaded individual does not accept promises of future fulfillment. He demands authenticity now, or nothing at all. This is why persuasion is so rare. It offers no comfort. It provides no social protection. It does not guarantee survival, success, or happiness. To live in persuasion is to accept total responsibility for one's existence without relying on collective myths. Carlo understood that most people cannot endure this condition. They cling to rhetoric not because they are stupid, but because rhetoric shields them from terror. The terror of standing alone. The terror of realizing that no system, no science, No morality can ultimately justify existence. Even science, Carlo argued, is not exempt from rhetoric. Science claims objectivity, yet it reduces the infinite complexity of life into abstract models. It explains mechanisms, but it cannot explain meaning. By pretending to be neutral, science becomes another tool of stabilization, another way of making the world manageable, predictable, and bearable. Traditional philosophy fares no better. Too often, it retreats into abstraction, constructing systems that replace religious certainty with conceptual certainty. These systems may be elegant, but they remain detached from lived experience. They explain existence without demanding transformation. For Carlo, true knowledge must be existential. It must be lived. Persuasion is not something one understands intellectually. It is something one becomes or fails to become. The price of clarity, life, death, and an unanswerable question. October 17, 1910, Carlo Michelstaedter submitted his completed thesis. Hours later, at the age of 23, he ended his life with a single gunshot. This act has haunted readers of his work for more than a century. Was it the logical conclusion of his philosophy? Or was it the tragic collapse of a mind that saw too much? Carlo himself left no explanation. And perhaps this silence is intentional. His philosophy does not offer conclusions. It offers exposure. What followed was a chain of tragedies that seemed to confirm his bleak vision of existence. His father died years later. Nadia Baradin, the woman Carlo loved, took her own life. During the Second World War, his mother Emma and his sister Elda were deported by the Nazis and murdered in concentration camps. Only Paula survived, escaping to Switzerland. Persuasion and Rhetoric, published posthumously in 1913, slowly gained recognition. It was never popular. It was never comforting. But those who encountered it rarely forgot it. The text does not seek followers. It seeks confrontation. In a world increasingly defined by distraction, productivity, and superficial identity, Michelstaedter's challenge remains disturbingly relevant. Are we living or merely functioning? Are our desires truly ours, or have they been implanted? Is freedom possible within a system designed to prevent it? Carlo offers no solutions. He does not tell us how to live. He simply strips away the lies and leaves us exposed to the question we spend our lives avoiding. Can we live without rhetoric? Or are we condemned to survive within it? That question remains unanswered. And perhaps that is the most honest legacy Carlo Michelstaedter could leave behind.